as we say hello to you. Here's George in Miami. Will start us off. George, good afternoon. How are you today? What do you have for me? Yes, George, you're there. Fire away.
Let me ask you a question. You would know the answer, so I'm going to defer to you. Andy Reid's record in playoff games in postseason, I believe somebody said it was 11-13. Is that correct?
I can look it up. I don't know at the top of my head. That sounds about right. Say that.
All right. Well, I'd like to know of that 11-13, how much of that record was when Jim Johnson was his defensive coordinator in Philadelphia? I want to believe that Jim Johnson was instrumental in most of the wins that he had.
Well, you can't do that because he's the head coach. That goes under his ledger, not Jimmy Johnson. All right, Reid is correct. He's 11-13 now in the postseason. Right. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and put him where the Marty Schottenheimer belongs, who's 5-14, never won a postseason game in his life. I won't go there. That's a little strong, but there is no question about it. Chuck Knox was 11-9, and Chuck Knox was 7-9 in the postseason. Not great either. No, I'm sorry. Chuck Knox was 7-11 in the postseason. Right. He couldn't win a postseason game if his life depended on it. Reid is not good in the postseason. I think he's 1-4 to Chiefs, and he's terrible with the Eagles.
I just think that when he was with the Eagles and Jim Johnson, not Jimmy Johnson, Jim Johnson.
I know what you're talking about, the defense who passed away. Yeah.
The late Jim Johnson.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely.
I think that a lot of those 11 wins came when Jim Johnson was his defensive coordinator.
That's quite possible. I mean, I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure if that's fair. I don't want to do that to him where I'm going to sit there and say without Jim Johnson he couldn't win. I don't think that is accurate. I don't think that's fair. We can look up Jim Johnson specifically for that stat if you wish. But Reid is 11-13 in the playoffs. And for a guy who's won that many regular season games, you got to be a little better than that. Now, George Allen was never great in the postseason either. George Allen in the postseason is 2-7. So we've always discussed that. George Allen won the 2 playoff games that year with the Redskins before they lost to Miami in Super Bowl 7. But he is never good in the postseason either. But that is a terrible postseason record for Reid. I mean, he's just not good in this spot. I don't know if I put the blame on him. I don't know where the blame goes on Saturday. I know the officials. And one thing on the officiating, if I may, we all know Jeff Triplett. Every time he gets involved, it just seems like the game goes haywire, whatever the reason. I know everybody is annoyed by the play in the second quarter at 14-0 as far as the fumble on the sack with Mariota. The only thing I would say about that is I can't go crazy on that kind of play call, the fact that he ruled forward progress had been stopped. I can't go crazy on that because the game was 21-3 at the half. All right, that play did not happen in the fourth quarter. Like the play is 21-3 at the half. After that non-call, they still restabilized the game and added to their lead. So I can't go back to that play now and start to differentiate. Now, he made a mistake with the call, and the Titans did get a field goal out of it. But, I mean, the Chiefs made more mistakes that can count. They had nothing offensively going in the second half. I can't sit there and go back to that when I analyze the game. Mistake, yes, didn't cost Kansas City the win, as far as I'm concerned. Robert is in Portland, Oregon, and he's got a chance. He's on Mad Dog Unleashed. Robert, welcome. How are you today? What do you have?
Yeah, really good. Hey, I just feel that, by the way, the loss of Kelce killed KC. I don't care what anybody says. He wins ball games for him. But the bottom line is I think that Minnesota's going to prevail this weekend because I just feel in that dome they're unbeatable. They haven't lost a game there yet, and I think they're going to. Well,
they did lose a game. Detroit beat them this year up there. They were 7-1. But I understand your point. Go ahead.
And then secondly, I think you're right about this Atlanta club. I just feel that Folds, unless Philly just goes crazy and gets Ryan on his butt the whole first half, and they get somewhat of a lead with Folds there. I think that you could have Atlanta going to Minnesota, and as far as the AFC is concerned, it doesn't matter. I think Pittsburgh and New England are going to face each other in Foxborough, and I think that Pittsburgh, we just got to hope finally overcomes their inability to do anything right against Brady. I think they might do it. It's just going to be one of those deals. But I like that Atlanta hanging in there, and anything could happen with Case Keenum against Atlanta and that final in the NFC title game. I'll take my.
Well, I think you said a lot of things that make sense. I do think that Tennessee is going to play well in Foxborough this weekend. There was something about Tennessee that was impressive there in that second half. Yes, Kansas City certainly helped. Don't get me wrong, but the way they responded with Mariota, they wanted to play hard for the coach Malarkey. They did. I think they believe a little bit. I think they got a little momentum. Now, I know Belichick, he's very good at taking something away, so chances are Derrick Henry's not going to go crazy. I'll buy that. They're going to leave the ball in Mariota's hands, so somebody's going to have to step up. But I just got a funny feeling Tennessee's a live dog right now. I don't feel that way about Jacksonville. I do not feel that way about Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's walking into a tough spot because Pittsburgh is not going to play that badly again as they did in Week 5. I do think that Tennessee, listen, to beat the Patriots up there is not, but I've said all along that I think the Pats are going to lose the game. And they got 3 chances to lose 1. And I think they will lose a game here somewhere along the line here in 2018. Ron in Long Island, New York. Chance for him. Ronnie, good afternoon. How are you today? What do you have?
Chris, I think the last time I spoke to you about the Saints, I think Aaron Brooks was our quarterback.
I think you're right, Ron. It's good. Ron might be a refugee. Matter of fact, I think Ronnie. Hey, Ronnie's a refugee. So let's hear it.
Well, just got my subscription, Chris.
Love all our fans. With Mike's departure, they're all on the raft, bouncing around the harbors of Long Island, not finding refuge, not finding sanctuary. Either an FM or an AM dial. And so they have found their home here in SiriusXM. Good to have your word, Ron. Now, let me hear. Fire away.
Listen, Chris, thank you. Chris, real quick on the Saints. My body's still shaking, but I tell you, I can live with that call with Peyton. I know it's the football. It's not the correct football call.
Yeah, I understand. You got 2 yards with Breeze to win the game instead of relying on your defense. I get that.
And, Chris, if we would have lost that game, I have no problem with losing. I said that. If we lose that game, I do not blame Peyton. In my opinion, if I was a Panthers fan, Chris, if I was a Panther fan, I'd want them to punt. In my opinion, I don't, like I said, I'm not a Panther fan.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that's an excellent point. I know a few minutes ago I said he probably should have punted, but I do think I do think you're right. If you're Carolina in that spot, you probably are afraid the first down in the game is over. Because they have no timeout. The game's over. So it's only 2 yards, and he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. You're probably happy. You probably didn't like the fact he went for it. That's a good point, Ron. Go ahead.
Yeah, I tell you, I can live with it. It's just like I said, Chris, we won a Super Bowl. Well, I want more, obviously, but having won the Super Bowl in 2009, anything now is gravy because I never thought growing up that they would ever win a Super Bowl. But now looking at the Minnesota, Chris, real quick, Carolina, I tell you, they did a good job. I really didn't think Breeze had a 375-yard game in him. I really didn't think he did anymore, Chris. I thought, a lot of his yards this year with dinks and dunks, Kamara.
He played great. He played great in the game. He played very, very well.
And I didn't think. Carolina, what they did, it was smart. They took away our run and made. It kind of sounds funny, but he's going to be 39 next week, Chris. They made Breeze beat them, and we did. Now, what scares me about Minnesota is Minnesota doesn't have to sell out to the run or the pass. Their front four, they can get pressure with their front four. They have an all-pro cornerback who could take Michael Thomas away, who's a great receiver. A lot of guys don't watch him. He has great hands.
Yeah, excellent play. He's big. He's a big target. I agree with you on that. Very good receiver. Go ahead.
But I don't think we're going to. I think it's going to be close. If it can be in the 20s, I think we win. If it's going to be like 17-13, I think we're going to lose. But I have, when the playoffs started, I just had a funny feeling that if Atlanta got in the playoffs, that they're going to run the table, and I still think they will. But, we'll see. I still give us a shot. And obviously, if we do get lucky and win this week, and Atlanta wins, which I think they will, we'll have a home game at least.
And I think you'll beat. I think that's a bad matchup for Atlanta. I think Atlanta. I think that championship game will be a hard game no matter where they go, to Atlanta, to Minnesota, or to New Orleans. I'd almost rather go to Minnesota. You lost to Minnesota already, so you owe them one. And I don't know. I think the Saints will be very familiar with Atlanta when they came down to New Orleans. And the Saints don't lose a lot of playoff games in that building. I don't know. They usually win those big games. Yeah, they're very good at home in the postseason. Have the Saints ever lost a home playoff game in the last under Breeze? Has Peyton? He hasn't played a lot of them. I'll grant you. When they lose in the playoffs, they lose those games at home on the road. You know, they don't usually lose that games at home. Let me look for a minute with the Saints at home in the postseason. I mean, obviously they beat Minnesota at home and they beat Arizona at home in 2009. That's a 2 wins. In 2010. New Orleans was 11-5. They were on the road, so you can't count that. Earlier with Andy Reid, a long time ago, they won a playoff game in their building when they beat the Eagles. I mean, they usually win playoff games at home. When they make it in 2011, they beat Detroit at home, and then they lost at San Francisco. That's 3. They did not have a home game in 2013. In 2014, they did not make the playoffs, nor did they do in 15 last year. They had 3 bad years in a row. Those are 4 right there. They usually win home games in the postseason. I would not want to. Atlanta's in a tricky spot. They got to worry about Philly first, but no matter who they play in that championship, can be a hard game. But maybe you'd rather play Minnesota. Maybe the Vikings get a little tight, knowing they're 60 minutes from hosting the Super Bowl in their stadium, and maybe they get a little tight. I don't know. And the Vikings have one thing about the Vikings, if they do win this week and they host that game, I'm telling you right now, for 7 days, all they're going to hear about, and it's going to be unavoidable, is, wow, look at this, 60 minutes away from hosting the Super Bowl. And when everybody says that for 7 days, half the time you lose the game. That is something you would consider. Half pass, here's Justin Shackle. Mad Dog Unleashed.
Mad Dog Sports Radio.